Members of council, if you can please come to the council chambers. Members of council, please come to the council chambers. Nine, 13, 14, 15, 17. Okay, members of council, this meeting is now resumed. Please take your seats. Every minute today is going to make a big difference. So this meeting is now resumed. Members, we have a presentation this morning to recognize the Invictus Games Toronto 2017. I would like to call upon Mayor Tory to come forward for the presentation.
Good morning, Madam Speaker and members of council. And actually, I think the presentation is going to be to us, but I'll say a few words before inviting Michael Burns to come up and speak. And just to say, and I know, Madam Speaker, that I echo the words of all the members of the council, and for that matter, all the people of the City of Toronto, to say what a privilege and an honour it was for us to host the Invictus Games in 2017. I know when I was called to a meeting, and it had to be about a year before the Games, not much more than a year before the Games, and it was a meeting that involved Michael Burns, who of course was just appointed at that time as the Chief Executive Officer of the Invictus Games, and Prince Harry and a couple of other people that had been involved with previous Invictus Games. My reaction was to say that I think it'll be good. I didn't know, I'll admit, how good it ended up being for the city and for just what it represented in terms of the kind of humanity that we would want to associate with our city and so on. But my other reaction that I had in that room today was one of skepticism about whether in such a short period of time this could actually be done, because it was one of those things where this wasn't 5 years ahead of the event. It was only marginally ahead of the event in terms of time. But yet again, I think the power of this event and the power of the people that were involved in it as participants, meaning the veterans from all the different countries, and just what they stood for and the narrative of the whole thing, proved to be even more powerful than sports is generally. Because sports, we've seen, there's something about sports, people ask me about it often, even in the context of something like this weekend and our soccer team being in the championship game, and how important is that to the city? And I say, well, it's important in many respects, but somehow sports does infect the psychology of the city in a positive way when things are going well. And this thing, though, is beyond anything that I've sort of seen, I think probably most of us, just because there wasn't just the element of kind of international teams coming here to compete in sports, which were interesting to watch, but you had the narratives that went with it, each of the individual participants, and what was sort of laid out through the media and what you saw during the course of the week. And we saw people, and I had a chance, as some of you probably did, to talk to them. And the courage they represented, not even so much the courage of having been in very difficult circumstances representing their respective countries, but the courage of the aftermath, where these people would tell you about the trauma they had experienced, either physical or mental trauma or both, and how they were dealing with it. I had a fascinating conversation, I remember very well, down at Fort York, which is where the archery competition was, and I came to realize I hadn't. The fact that the person that I was standing talking to, who was a Canadian veteran, had never been involved in archery before. It wasn't as if this was their lifelong hobby and they were finally getting a chance to be in these games. They had learned archery and had gone to participate in archery so that they could be a part of these games, but then they explained the part I could never understand myself, which was how being on that team and learning the archery and all that was helping them to deal with the PTSD that they were experiencing. And so it gave me a fuller understanding of what these games really meant to these people, and it allowed you to sort of express the wish that you know, every single person that's been through a traumatic circumstance could have something like that, and maybe that should ultimately be our goal. So the purpose of this morning is to, I guess, on my behalf, and I'm sure Michael Burns will do it as well, to say thank you on your behalf to our city administration in the broadest sense, because everybody was involved helping to put this on, from you know, our parks department, facilities, policing, transportation, solid waste. Everybody was involved, and I think we, you know, sometimes overlook, because these things just happen, that they were departments of our city that really performed at an exceptional level, and we should say thank you, as I'm sure Michael's going to do. But also just to say thank you to the people of Toronto, because a lot of people you know, volunteered and otherwise got themselves involved in making this a success. And it wasn't as big an undertaking as Pan Am, but I think it proved that you don't have to be big to get us on the map and to really teach us a lesson, as it were, about human beings and about courage and about compassion and all of those good things. So I would like to just say congratulations to all concerned, especially to Michael Burns, who I'm going to call up here now, together with Michael Thompson, the chair of our Economic Development Committee, because we're going to ask Michael to say a few words, and we're grateful for all of your efforts and your leadership. And you were great to work with, I will say. And this is a guy I've known for many years, and I wouldn't always say that about him, but he was great to work on this. He was really a pleasure to work with. And Michael, thank you for what you did for the city, and I would just ask you to please say a few words as you wish.
Super. Well, thank you very much, Mayor Tory. It's a great honor to be here. I was born and raised in this city, and I have to admit this is actually the first time I've been in this room. But it's nice to be here today, and a lot of familiar faces and friends in the room. You know, the Invictus Games just over 2 months ago made a huge impact, not just here in Toronto, but across the country. The team that worked around the clock for close to 2 years to help deliver these games produced more than 2 billion marketing impressions. We had 111 countries live stream the games. We had more than 40 million people around the world who tuned in to watch these games. We had 7.5 million Canadians across Canada also follow these games from coast to coast to coast. And at the end of the day, we had a complete sellout. From all the preliminary rounds to the final rounds to the opening and closing ceremonies. And in our national polling that we started well before we even announced the games were coming to Canada, across the country, 5% of Canadians had put up their hands to say that they had heard of the Invictus Games. In Toronto, that number was slightly higher at 8%. At the conclusion of these games, in less than 18 months, we took national awareness from 5% to 84% across Canada, and here in Toronto from 8% to 97%. I can tell you right now that pollsters that conducted this research have never seen a cause, an event, a product, or a service, or even a political party achieve that kind of exponential growth in such a short period of time. That's credit to the team. It's credit to the more than 1,700 volunteers who were mainly here from Toronto that contributed to helping deliver these games. And it's also credit to City Council for the work that you did to get behind these games very early on. I want to thank the Mayor and his office for the tremendous support from day one. I want to recognize Michael Williams, Laura Jane Elkin, Zabe Sheikh in the Economic Development Group, Councillor Thompson, and many others here in the room for everything that you did to bring these games to life. The one thing I would say is, as profound an impact that these games had on those who, as a result of their service, have come home ill and injured, these games, I believe, had just as much a profound impact on the public. And not just recognizing the unique challenges that our military families face, but also appreciating everything that we have in this country as a result of our military families and their sacrifices today and in the past. So on behalf of our entire organizing committee, I do want to say thank you to City Council for your tremendous support in helping deliver these historic games to this incredible city that we call home, Toronto. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I've got this right here. Yeah, we'll see. Also, I've got a token of our appreciation that we would like to give to City Council. It's one of the official flags of the Invictus Games, which we hope that you'll find a prominent spot here at City Hall for the public to see and remember what this city was able to deliver here back in September. So you want to bring it up? Great. So, Mayor, so you want to?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, let's go to the.
Apparently, it's going to Councillor Thompson's office. Like all the other stuff. You should be in the middle, like probably.
No.
Thank you. Members of Council, we will now review and confirm the order paper. To this point, Council has completed 181 items. There are 41 items left on the agenda. I propose that we consider the following two items first, as Council has already started them. EX 2910 on enhanced security measures for Toronto City Hall, and EX 2919 and on the 2018 rate-supported budget for solid waste management services and the 2018 solid waste rates. Council would then consider the two previously timed items. Today's meeting must end by 3:30 p.m. under Council's policy of ending meetings before sundown on Fridays to permit religious observance. I will now take the release of member holds. Please put your name under request to question staff. So as I mentioned, as it was mentioned, we do have 41 items left. So I would encourage members of council that if you could have quick releases, please have quick releases. And if you need to speak on an item, even though we have 5 minutes to speak, can you please just limit it so we can at least complete most of the items, or we might have to come back, or the items will be deferred to next year. So it's your choice. So, Councillor Mihevc?
Yes, and I'd be happy to move it if there is the will, that we work over lunch but not take any votes between 12:30 and 2 o'clock. That will both respect people's commitments that they've made.
Well, there have been some appointments
sounds
at
like
lunch
that
break.
died.
So,
Okay.
all right, so let's do quick releases, and maybe that might help. Councillor Fragadakis.
Madam Speaker, so I know that I asked yesterday to have the speed limit on Bayview timed as the second item today. Now it appears that it'll be the fourth item today. I actually have a previously scheduled in-ward meeting at 2:30, and I have to leave here because I didn't plan it. So I'm wondering if it's not timed and it doesn't get dealt with today, because I'd actually like to be here for that vote, that it doesn't get dealt with, and we deal with it when we deal with the rest of the items that aren't, of the 41 that aren't dealt with today.
Okay.
So I'd like it untimed, and we'll deal with it when we deal with it.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Fragadakis, do you have any quick items?
No.
No? All right. Councillor Holliday, quick items?
Yes, Speaker, I do. Thank you. Page 4, HL 22.3, reducing health risks from traffic-related air pollution. There is an amendment coming, and there's a second item, PE 23.7.
Okay, hold on. Let's deal with that first.
It's the same item. The two are together. It's two for one.
Oh, I'm sorry. And then the other one on what page?
It's on the following page, page 5, PE 23.7, same title, reducing health risks from traffic-related air pollution.
So you're releasing both?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's vote on it separately.
With the amendment.
He's just releasing it. Oh, there's the amendment on the screen. Okay, well, let's vote on HL 22.3. Do you want a recorded vote? Okay, recorded vote.
General Manager.
On the amendment.
Doesn't mean she likes it when she helped write it.
Yeah, she changed.
Okay, come on, members. I
Councillor
can't.
Fillion, please.
It's very noisy in here.
The amendment carries 18 to 15.
Okay, item is amended. All in favor? Recorded vote. Yes, I know. So we're doing the Board of Health one first. Recorded vote.
Councillor Fillion, please. Councillor Burnside. And Councillor Palacio.
The item is amended carries 30 to 3.
On page 5, P 23.7. Okay. As amended, all in favor? Carried. Councillor Davis.
On page, where am I? I'm on page 6. EY 26.25, NY 26.28, NY 26.32, and I would do NY 26.33 on page 7, and I am going to release those.
Okay, thank you. So on EY 2625, all in favor? Carried. Oh, come on. Recorded? Recorded vote. We're trying to rush the agenda along.
Councillor Palacio, please. And Councillor Troisi, please.
Councillor Davis, please.
The item carries unanimously 34 in favor.
On page 6, NY 2628, all in favor? Carried. On page 6, NY 2632, all in favor? Carried. On page 7, NY 2633, all in favor? Carried. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Speaker.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Davis, you had another one? Councillor Davis, you have another one?
I tried. Page 8, MM 35.5. I thought I had already released this, but the Uber data breach.
Okay, on page 8, MM 35.5, Uber data breach. Councillor Davis is releasing, on favor. Carried. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Speaker. On page 3, item TE 27.46, construction staging area, 4 Avenue Road. I understand Mayor Tory has an amendment. I'm happy to have him move that if he'd like, and we can deal with it.
Okay. This is on page 3, T 2746, construction staging area for 4 Avenue Road.
So
Mayor
the motion, Madam Speaker, that will be put on the screen is one that has the effect, and in putting it forward, I thank both the people who are proponents of the project, but also our city staff, Councillor Cressy, my own office. But the effect of this is to reduce the period of time during which there will be a full lane closure from 19 months to 7 months, and to have large periods of time during which the lane will only be closed at night. and not during rush hour, or at non-rush hour periods, I should put it that way. So that's the effect of this. So I think it's a successful example, of which there will be more, where we are not just going to accept what people come in with, but we'll work with them to do something better. So that's what this amendment achieves, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. On the amendment, all in favor? Carried. Okay, recorded vote on the item. Recorded vote.
Councillor Wong-Tam and Councillor McMahon, please, and Councillor Perruzza second.
Councillor Cole and Councillor Crisanti, please.
Councillor Perks, please.
The motion carries unanimously, 35 in favor.
Councillor Ainsley.
Hi, good morning, Madam Speaker. On page 4, EX 29.15, new supports and housing for survivors of human trafficking. I had an amendment to make to one of the motions. This is the same amendment that this council passed in 2013.
Okay, if we can put the amendment on the screen, please.
This is basically the same request that we made to the federal government in 2013. And if I can just speak briefly to this as a city councillor that has a large Indigenous population in my ward, if you look at some of the statistics, Indigenous people make up 4% of the Canadian population, but make up 50% of the trafficking victims. In Toronto, the Indigenous population makes up 1% of the city population. 20% of the victims in Canada of human trafficking live in Toronto. 10% of the federal funds, or the equivalent of $500,000 a year, goes to victim support. If you look at the support on an international basis, Sweden, at the top end of the scale, spends $1.27 per capita on supporting human trafficking victims. The Canadian government spends 19 cents a person. So this is basically asking for the same support for victims of human trafficking from the federal government as we did in 2013.
Okay, so on page 4, EX 2915, Councillor Ainsley's amendment on the screen. All in favor? Recorded vote.
Councillor Palacio, Councillor Crisanti, Councillor Mihevc, please. Councillor Fragedakis, please.
Councillor Davis, please. Councillor Bailao, please.
The amendment carries unanimously, 35 in favor.
Item as amended, all in favor, carried. Councillor Ainsley, do you have more?
Yes, on the same page at the bottom, CD 24.3, Community Recreation 2018 to the 2020 Growth Plan and Waitlist Management. I've had my questions answered by staff. I can release that.
On page 4, CD 24.3, Councillor Ainsley is releasing. All in favor, carried.
And I have one more, Madam Speaker, at the very bottom of the same page, page 4, CD 24.9, Improving Data Collection Management of Toronto's Homeless Population. I have an amendment that I would like to move. That's basically asking shelter management to work with the city's Chief Information Officer to release occupancy statistics per shelter in an open data format and report to the Community Development and Recreation Committee in the first quarter.
Okay. Who said hold?
All right, I'll continue to hold that then. Thank you.
Councillor Wong-Tam.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. On page 7, TE 28.80, endorsement of events for liquor licensing purposes. There are no more amendments. We are ready to release that.
Okay, on page 7, TE 2880, Councillor Wong-Tam is releasing. All in favor, carried. Do you have any more? No? Counselor Cole?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Item number Public Works 25.5.
What page?
It is on page 6. Thank you.
Yes?
I have a very quick amendment to add to that staff is fine with. This is on the Allen Road. This is on the Allen Road closures. It's just asking Metrolinx to work with transportation.
Okay, hold on, Councillor Cole. I want to know if we have the amendment. Okay, the amendment's on the screen.
Very controversial, as Councillor Campbell just pointed out. Oh, sorry, Campbell.
Okay.
I'd like a
So on page 6, PW 25.5, Councillor Cole is moving an amendment. All in favor? Carried. Recorded vote.
Councillor Crisanti, please.
Councillor Karygiannis, please. Councillor Perruzza, please.
The amendment carries unanimously, 35 in favor.
Item is amended. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Karygiannis?
Yes, Madam Speaker. I do have two items, one on page 7. SC 26.16, Traffic Control Signals Review. I think there's a slight technical amendment. If I can ask the staff to put it up, please.
Okay, that's on page 7, SC 2616.
Basically, Madam Speaker, we just want to make sure that the no left turns that exist right now are removed, and thank you.
So on page 7, SC 2616, the amendment's on the screen. All in favor? Okay, item is amended, recorded vote.
Councillor Cole and Councillor Fragedakis, please. And Councillor Fletcher, please. Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Fragedakis, please.
The item is amended, carries 33 to 2.
Councillor Karygiannis?
Yes, Madam Speaker. I do have one more on page 3. PW 24.3, Utility Locate Services for Business Improvement Areas is required by the Ontario Underground Infrastructure Notifications Act, and I do have an amendment that was pre-circulated. Okay, fine, I'll hold.
Well, why don't you just vote against it?
Yeah.
Well,
you know what? Just vote against it.
You know.
Okay, fine. I'll hold. I'll keep holding.
Councillor Perruzza?
I have a release, but there's a slight amendment that they're typing up. I'm not sure it's quite ready. Can I just move down a speaker or two?
Well, it's not ready. Okay. Yes. Councillor Layton?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This is on page 8, MM 34.44. I believe we had a motion to introduce. I'm happy to move it forward.
Okay,
this
so
is,
I'm...
1032 Queen Street West whale and liquor license, removal of conditions.
Okay, that's on page 8. That was introduced yesterday. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Perruzza, yes?
Yeah, I believe the clerk may have the amendment ready. Is that correct?
Why, I'm just waiting to, I'm waiting for them to tell me if they have it ready. Councillor Ainsley? You still have, you still. Okay. Okay. Councillor Perruzza?
Yeah. Yes, Speaker. I'd like to release on page 3 at the bottom of the page, MM 35.1.
Mayor, you have a, okay.
Request to reinstate Rogers Community Television Channel. Request to reinstate Rogers Community Television Channel with the amendment. And the amendment, because this is a carryover from the last council meeting, I'm just changing the dates from December 6, 7, 8 to January 31st, February 1st, February 2nd meeting, okay? For the report back.
Okay, so Councillor Perruzza on page 3, the bottom of page 3, MM 35.1. The amendment is on the screen. All in favor? Recorded vote.
Councillor Palacio, Councillor Crisanti, please.
The amendment carries 33-1.
Item is amended. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Perruzza, you also have another one on that page. Did you want to release that one? Pardon? Councillor Perruzza. Councillor Perruzza, here. You have another one on that page from the last meeting, ST 14.5. Did you want to release that one too?
No, Speaker. There's a motion on that one, and we'll probably get to a vote on that one. No.
All right, that's fine. The answer is no. All those in favor of adopting the order paper? Recorded. Pardon? He doesn't have it yet. No, he doesn't.
Councillor Kelly, please. Councillor Karygiannis, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Perruzza, Councillor DiGiorgio, please. Councillor Wong-Tam.
Councillor Mihevc, please.
Councillor Kelly and Councillor Perruzza, thank you.
The motion to adopt the order paper carries unanimously, 35 in favor.
Okay, so we will now go back to... Yes, Councillor Davis?
I'm just rising on a point of personal announcement. I just want to particularly have the attention of the chair of the TTC. This morning on the subway, when I came to Yonge and Bloor, I was quite dismayed to see how backed up it was. However, I was quite relieved to see people running through the crowd carrying a pole with a loop on it. And I want to commend our animal services staff and our TTC staff for successfully apprehending a raccoon that was in the station and then on the train. And because of the new design of the subway train, it managed to run the entire length of the train, but was caught at the last car. So congratulations to all of our emergency services personnel, who I presume safely returned the raccoon to the wild.
Thank you. So, Councillor Cole.
I only have a few scratches this morning as a result of it, but thank you for that compliment.
I knew it.
Okay, so we're going to go back to EX 29.10, Enhanced Security Measures at Toronto City Hall. If you'll wait for a minute so the staff could put the speakers list on the screen. Councillor Perruzza, you're up to speak.
On what, Speaker? I mean, not that I wouldn't be happy to say something on something, but
Well,
what would I be saying something on?
But Councillor Perruzza, I just said what we were on. The EX.
I'm sorry, I missed it, Speaker.
Okay. We are on EX 29.10, which is the Enhanced Security Measures for Toronto City Hall. We started it yesterday.
Oh, yeah, no, that was the day before. That was at the end of the day. Speaker, I'm okay with that. I just want to move things along. I'm fine.
All right.
I don't need to talk on that.
That's the best
Yeah.
Count. Okay, thank you very much. It's greatly appreciated. Councillor Holliday, you're up to speak.
Thank you, Speaker. I will try to be as brief as I can. I do have a motion, if I may ask that it be put up, and that is that we give the DCM authority to ask that members of the public use only the main entrance as a means to enhance security in this building. I really believe that it is a procedural change that would make a lot of difference. It's a very porous City Hall right now. And I don't believe this in any way would take away from the enjoyment of people visiting this place, but would pay back in many, many layers on making it a safer place. Many members of council know that I was a public servant for the Ontario government for about 15 years before I became a councillor. And I look very, very fondly back on that time. And I cherish it, but there's a few dark moments in that time that I think about in working in a building in and around Queen's Park that were scary. I think about an OCAP protest many years ago in that the staff were locked in the building. It was put into lockdown. And let's say that during this council meeting, I believe members of that same organization were here in the chamber. I think about the time that a van was driven up on the lawn of Queen's Park and the person doused themselves in gas, and there was a near miss of a terrible incident. I can tell you that in my time there I saw death more than once, and I don't want to talk about that on camera, but if you'd like to approach me after I speak, I'd be happy to share with you some of those details. I've seen people be harmed in there, and I've seen the trauma that it does to people that work there. People I knew that came away after an incident irreparable for the rest of their life. And these are just simple things in the City of Toronto. You know, you need to look no further than the G20 protest to remind you that things can get dicier in this city than what we're enjoying today with very, very good political peace. I know things get heated in the chamber here and we do have actions here, but boy, another government, another time could certainly be very, very different. We were lectured in this meeting by a member of council about, you know, taking steps when you've got something presented to you to try to save a life, and how important it is to shake it off and remain fixed on a subject. Well, we've got advice in this report, very credible advice, and I think the Director of Security talked about it, that there are perceived threats. And I think it's incumbent on this council to take some steps to deal with those. This building was built in 1965. We all work here. We all know what its shortcomings are. We all know that there probably needs to be a change. It's not 1965 anymore, and they don't make and shape buildings the way that this is and introduce some of the weaknesses that it has, because things have changed around us. I've tried to introduce something which I think is quite tempered in nature, that perhaps everybody should find it in their heart to support. I think it's important that this council takes a step to make some changes around here. And in my questioning, I talked a little bit about, you know, controls are put in place that are very, very absolute, and there's other payback from some controls that offer a deterrent. And I think the important thing here is that we show people a message that this council takes security very, very seriously here. It's about security of visitors to the building. It's about security of workers in the building. It's about security of the government itself. And we should remind ourselves that the government is not you or I as individuals, but it's a collective. And a disruption in the government is a big deal. It's an emergency in this city. Then it triggers emergency management plans. It would attract national, international headlines. And I think we should be very cognizant about the damage that that could cause, both to the well-being of our citizens, to our economy, and to the reputation of our city. And, you know, I hope you'll think this through. I will even admit that I'm not entirely convinced of all the pieces in the report. I will accept the idea of the recommendations coming out of the Executive Committee to consult this a little bit further, but that's about as far as my tolerance is in terms of stretching and not taking some actions. And I hope you'll see that what I'm putting forward is very mild in nature, but it is something that we can start with. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, clarification of the motion, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. How many access points would be required to be eliminated and shut down?
I don't know the quantity of them, but essentially what I will say is that it is a change of instruction. My understanding right now is that all of the access points around this building, a member of the public is allowed to enter. And this would simply ask that they come through the main entrance.
And so someone entering through the parking garage would be required to go outside and could not enter through that entrance down below. They would be required to go back outside, up, and through the front door?
I've spoken to staff about this, and it's an important observation. I think that this direction is generous enough that the staff could leave that open if they felt that that was acceptable. I will point out that the stairwell from the parking garage essentially brings you into the main lobby, the main vestibule of the main entrance. But again, I won't be that prescriptive. The security professionals are on staff and they can figure out how that works. And I'm sure that they would take a balanced approach in convenience and meeting security objectives.
Okay, thanks, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Just on a quick question, because I don't know how you intend to treat the path, because the path comes up in the rotunda. Yes. But it's not the main door. So I'm just actually curious.
Yeah, same question as Councillor Campbell. I'm aware of how the path comes up through the parking garage, and that staircase that brings you up from the lower level in the parking garage it brings you up to the main vestibule, essentially just in behind the main doors. I have spoken to staff about this. I'm satisfied that the motion is broad enough that they can determine whether or not that's considered the main entrance as well. And I will let them make some adjustments. I'm fairly certain that they are customer service oriented and they wouldn't want to make a hardship on people visiting City Hall, and that might be an acceptable option.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, it's sort of on the same line as the other two. Did you talk to staff about the cafeteria and the entrance and exit to the cafeteria along with the patio and the impact that if we close one of those entrances, the impact of business?
Yeah, I didn't speak about the cafeteria. But I would say that we should probably take a good look at that. I'm not sure how much tolerance they have between the door of the cafeteria into the inner workings of the City Hall and the main entrance. But again, it's about bringing a focus to the front door of the City Hall and the front vestibule of the City Hall, as opposed to some of the back doors that are presently used today.
No, and again, with respect, I mean, if this motion is to just have the main entrance, people come into the main entrance, and that'll be a big impact to the cafeteria. So to support your motion, we would have to literally close the cafeteria. So it's hard for me to support. I know what you're wanting to do. I want to support it, but the cafeteria poses a big problem.
Yeah, you know what? I'm happy if there's a friendly amendment out there if somebody wants to ask staff about how to deal with that door. Again, I'd like to be flexible, but I'd like to actually make some change here so that we're trying to move in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. No friend.
Councillor Fletcher.
I just want to go back. So we're recognizing that there is a separate entrance to the cafeteria, which also leads to their patio, that this motion doesn't cover.
There is the Wheel-Trans entrance, which is at the north end of the building, where people who are taking Wheel-Trans, that's their pickup spot. Are you aware of that?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Okay, you're not aware of that. How about if you've got kids coming to City Hall and you're driving in, when you take the entrance that we talked about, the path, then you're able to go on the elevator with your small children.
Yeah, I believe
Have
that.
you taken that into
I believe
account?
that question was answered already. That
I
we
didn't
talked
hear
about
that.
the parking garage, and that brought people into at least the main vestibule of
Well-
City Hall, and that staff have the flexibility to consider that.
No, if you're driving, there's not a daycare entrance on Bay Street. You'd have to go
You
up.
didn't ask about the daycare. You asked about the parking garage.
The parking garage and the accessible elevator is also available to them. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll let staff determine that.
No,
mean,
I
they
know
need to make
that's
it
the
work.
case. So if you're coming in a wheelchair in the path, there's only one way to get upstairs, and that's on the elevator. There's one accessible entrance to City Hall from the basement, and that is the path and the elevator, correct?
You'd know better, I guess. I don't know about the configuration of every door here.
I see. And down on the first, in the basement, beside the accessible elevator is where all of the plans, you know, probably your house plan is stored down there, at least for the old City of Toronto. If you have to go back and research, all of the architectural drawings are all there. Were you aware of that?
No, I'm not aware of where the storage for the architectural
Well, it's
drawings
not storage, it's a public office, actually, with hours 8 to 4, from the buildings department.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what this has to do with the motion. If you
Well,
can-
because these people have to get in directly to all these spots, so.
Yeah, they can come in the main door of City Hall.
I don't believe that's possible, thank you.
All right.
Councillor Doucette, questions?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Just very quickly to confirm, the doors, all the other doors right now around City Hall have a security guard, and I was under the impression that you had to have your city ID to get in those doors now. Is that not what's the rules are?
Yeah, I was surprised to learn as well that any member of the public can use those doors.
Okay, so I wasn't aware that. I understood that it was only city staff or councillors with ID who could use those doors now.
Yeah, I wouldn't need to place the motion if that was the case.
Just wanted a clarification exactly. So thank you very much.
Quite welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Pasternak, questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. To proceed with this, wouldn't you need an entire scoping of where security sits and the main sort of welcome area and kind of moving the security desk to the front of the entrance of the door, inside? Wouldn't you need a broader scope than just saying using the main entrance?
Well, I haven't made any recommendations about security. I'm not a security professional. If the deputy city manager needs to reconfigure the space, they can do that. But I haven't talked about changing security here. I've only talked about changing the way that the entrance functions as a way to enhance security. Those might be better questions for staff on how they would operationalize this.
We're asking questions of the mover now.
Right.
Whenever I try and get into the building from any other entrance, I do need my security pass. Is that not the case? I mean, certainly Bay Street, the west entrance.
Yep, I was
north entrance.
told that certain other entrances around the building, members of the public can use them.
Right, but where can the public walk in without a security pass?
Best to ask staff exactly what the entrances are, but I'm aware that other ones on the main level are accessible by the public.
You can't get in, as I said, on Bay Street or on Elizabeth or on the west entrance. Any other entrance that I've tried to get in,
So
you
without
cannot get in
so
without a pass.
okay, so fair enough. I would have to say that I have to go into camera to reveal some of the details that I know about those doors. But if you want to come ask me offline, I can explain it to you exactly. But I have had a conversation with staff who are aware of how the security works in the building, and it was absolutely confirmed that members of the public can use other doors around this building. Hence, it is quite actually a porous building.
Without a visitor screening system in place, how will everybody coming in the main entrance enhance security?
I think that bringing everybody into one singular place allows security to be present just as they are today. And again, without discussing techniques that should be in camera, it works on the system that we have right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, ma'am. We've got more speakers. Councillor Mihevc? Councillor Mihevc? No, he's speaking.
I'll be very quick, Madam Speaker. I support the results of the Executive Committee. You know, I think what we're trying to find here is the balance between accessibility and security. And I know we are a security-focused, some would say obsessed, I would say obsessed culture at the present time because of news reports and the way they kind of spin out. My caution to folks is be careful what you wish for, because the more security you put in place, the less accessibility we will have. And yes, there is a sweet spot, and I think the motion that got carried at executive says okay to the perimeter posts for vehicles coming in, and that is basically not going to affect accessibility here at City Hall, so I can support that piece. Everything else is sent off. We need to think about these things very, very carefully and not just take, like I think it's pretty easy to take the security banner and wrap yourself up in that. But be careful what you wish for, because every time you increase security, every time you put barriers between us and the public, then I think accessibility really suffers. So I'm really worried that we're going to go too fast. My urging to my colleagues is stick with the executive. Let's go slowly, recognizing that each piece there are some unintended consequences that we might not like down the road. Thank you. That's all I'll say.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Speaker. Very briefly, I was among members of council who were interviewed with respect to this subject, and my position then and now is that in an open and democratic society, government, especially local government, should be as open and as welcoming as possible. And I think that I would agree with previous speakers who've said that the report as is should be passed without amendment. I will not support the amendments that have been offered so far in the debate. The one thing we cannot do, Speaker, is turtle. We can't appear to be moved unnecessarily to strict security boundaries at City Hall, because we have a symbolic position that we must be aware of, Speaker. And if we appear to panic, I think it could raise a lot of questions out there in the general public. I think this is an important step to take. There are options that are referred to in the report, and I'm sure staff will take a look at the amendments that have been made, and they can reflect on them and report back. But I will not want to support those amendments as written.
We got one more Councillor Pasternak, quickly.
Just very, very quickly, Madam Speaker, it's important to realize that there's almost nothing before us. I mean, the only thing we're really approving today are the review enhancement of vehicle mitigation measures in Nathan Phillips Square. The rest of it goes back for more study, more public consultations, and more ideas. And that's exactly the way it should be. What we don't want here in a democratic chamber is Fortress City Hall. At the same time, I was in a conversation with a relative of mine asking me about this. And I said, on one hand, you don't want to turn it into a fortress, but on the other hand, you don't God forbid, a tragic incident to occur 5 years from now, and the media point to this place in time and saying council had the strategy, council had the report, and council didn't act. You don't want that either. So this is a prudent, the proposals before us are very prudent. It's moving forward, but it's also making wise decisions. The amendments, I think, before us are unsupportable, so I would urge you to endorse the Executive Committee decisions, and let's work hard as one to make sure that we can balance off the safety of our staff and everybody who works in these buildings, as well as the democratic ideals that we embrace.
Thank you. So our first motion is motion number 1 by Councillor Karygiannis. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to go so fast I forgot. Mayor Tory.
Well, I won't take long.
Yeah.
I wanted just to urge people to support what came from the Executive Committee by way of the modified recommendations, and I think it's been referred to just in the talks this morning that, we were trying to achieve, somebody called it a sweet spot a few minutes ago, between the accessibility that we all want to see. I mean, the magic of this building, and I've now only worked here for 3 years, but I've seen it, that people can feel free and do feel free to walk in and come right to our offices and bring their problems and bring their opportunities and so forth. And it is part of the magic of the place, and that includes being able to come to this chamber. And then, of course, there's the question of security, and I think there's a consensus that sort of says we can't, as much as we might like to, say, well, things are exactly the same as they were 5 years ago or 25 years ago. They're not. And so I think what we came up with here was the kind of consensus we do, recognizing that unanimity is only achieved, it seems, on Councillor Michael Ford motions. We had 2 of those last night. It was a remarkable thing to see. But it sent us in 3 directions, and I think it's worthy looking at this. One, we did agree, I think, by consensus to modify, make some modifications to the square. And what's that about? Well, that's about thousands of people who are at public events we have almost all the time. And that's about their safety ultimately, and doing something quite modest that most people, I would dare to say, won't even notice that we've done. Secondly, there is the request to our staff and others to see if they can find some less intrusive ways to provide some greater degree of safety and security in this chamber and in the committee rooms, but we found the original proposals to be a bit too intrusive, recognizing what the objective was, especially those, well, without getting into who sits where, there's some legitimate concern there. And then finally, the one that's most difficult, and I think the one that does require exactly what we're going to do, which is to get more input, especially public input, with respect to, I'll call it the front door question. It's more than that, but it's the front door question. And so I just hope people, I know there were some people, because we did, when I say we, the staff, very carefully did canvass the members of council, and I think talked to almost all of them. And there was, not so much reflected by speeches made here, there was more of a consensus in favor of additional security measures than might have been the case when the thing actually surfaced. And I think that's just because we really started to think about it and think about this balance and realized we had some more work to do. So I think what I tried to do by putting forward this amendment at the Executive Committee, which the committee approved, was to do what we thought we could do by consensus, and then to continue to look at this in a way that certainly involves the public. But I want to make one final point, and because various things have been written about this. I can say, from the standpoint of the first staff briefing I received on this, all the way through to the discussion at the Executive Committee and here at Council, a lot of people have sort of suggested somehow this was about the people sitting in this horseshoe, and never was it about that. It was about the thousands of people who come in here to work every day, the thousands of people who come to visit here every day. There are thousands in total who come in here every single day. And we're just among that group, but we're actually a tiny, tiny little percentage of that. And it was about that because, of course, as someone just said, I think it may have been Councillor Kelly a minute ago, if we have a responsibility, having received these reports, to then take a look at them in the interests of those thousands of people and do whatever we thought was prudent in achieving that balance, which is, like so many other issues, difficult to achieve between accessibility and security. So I commend these amendments, or these recommendations as amended by the Executive Committee, to the Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion number 1 by Councillor Karygiannis, recorded vote. They were just circulated now, the orange ones. But if we can put it on the screen. It's right there.
Councillor Crawford and Councillor Palacio, please.
Councillor Bailao, please. Councillor Perruzza, please.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 3 to 34.
Motion number 2 by Councillor Holyday. Okay, motion 2 by... Okay.
Take on that vote. If I may be excused, just to change my...
Okay, somebody to reopen it. On favor. Moved by Councillor Ford. All in favor. Carried. Okay, can I ask members of council to please pay attention?
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Please pay attention. So let's vote on motion number 1 again. Recorded vote.
Councillor Cole, please.
The motion carries 3 to 36.
Carries?
Loses.
I'm sorry. It's the 4th day of council. The motion does not carry. 3 to 36.
No, that was on the motion. Motion to reopen, Councillor Cressy. On favor, carried. Now we are now for the last time, the 3rd time, voting on motion number 1 by Councillor Karygiannis. Recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor McMahon. Councillor Wong Tam, please.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 2 to 36.
Councillor Crescenti. Okay, we're not reopening it. Motion number 2 by Councillor Holyday. Recorded vote.
Councillor Fragedakis and Councillor Cole, please. Thank you.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Perruzza, we need your vote, please.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 18 to 21.
Okay, item as amended. Oh, yeah, there was no amendments. Yeah, right, okay. On the item. Carried. All right, so now we'll go to, I didn't say recorded vote. Did I say recorded? Recorded vote. I'm just trying to rush this agenda along. Yes?
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor DiGiorgio, thank you. Councillor McMahon. Councillor Layton, please.
Councillor Palacio, Councillor Cole, please. Councillor Mihevc, please.
The item carries 39-1.
Okay, so now we'll go to page 4, which is ZX 29.19 2018 rate supported budget solid waste. Now, we started it yesterday, so if we can put the names on the screen. Yes, Councillor Davis?
I wonder if you could introduce the students of St. Bridget's
I will,
Catholic
Councillor
School.
Davis, when I get the note.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Here they are.
I just got it. Okay, please welcome the grade 5 students from St. Bridget Catholic School located in Ward 31. Their local counselor is Councillor Janet Davis, and their group leader is Katie Smith. Welcome. Councillor Davis, questions?
Make them good. You've got your kids.
Okay. One of the things I noticed in the budget was that our diversion rate that we're attempting to achieve is 70%. And I noticed that for 2018 and 2019, you're predicting only a 1% increase. I wonder, what are we trying to achieve this year that could improve that diversion rate?
Through you, Madam Speaker, we're implementing a number of programs that will help to improve the diversion rate and also to decrease the diversion rate. And that's probably part of the problem is diversion is not necessarily the best metric to measure performance anymore. We'll be implementing programs like a textiles recycling program that will help to increase our diversion rate by getting textiles out of the waste and recycling them, and we'll capture them. But we'll also be implementing a food waste reduction program that will actually reduce the amount of organic material being generated in the first place, which will actually bring our diversion rate down.
So food waste is one of the big challenges that we're experiencing, not just in Toronto, but in many jurisdictions. Could you just explain to us the issue of contamination in our Blue Bin program and how we're going to address that, and in the garbage stream, how we're going to address that with, I believe, greater enforcement?
Through you, Madam Speaker, yes, we've already started a more aggressive approach to dealing with contamination. That's the garbage that is put into the recycling bin. On the multi-residential side, we've been working with property owners directly to try and reduce that property by property. On the single-family side, we've recently started a program where we will go in front of the truck, we will flip the lid on that recycling bin. If we see garbage inside that recycling bin, we'll tag it, we'll identify what was wrong with it, we'll provide educational materials, and then we will actually push that bin back and not collect it that week. And we will come back, and so we've done that. And now we're just starting the second wave to come back to see what type of behavior change have we achieved by taking that action.
And we are going to begin to be, frankly, more aggressive on making sure that we have compliance in terms of recycling and composting.
Through you, Madam Speaker, yes. Contamination under recycling costs the city millions every year, and we can reduce those costs simply by reducing the amount of contamination.
And what's the percentage that we've discovered in our recent audits?
We're currently sitting at 26% contamination, and for every percentage point we bring that down, it saves the city approximately $600,000 a year.
Okay. The other thing that is obviously one of the biggest challenges is packaging that we can't control, but we have one of our principles is to try and work towards reducing or implementing, supporting extended producer responsibility. I wonder if you could tell us What are the regulatory changes that we're hoping to achieve and with our new authority under the City of Toronto Act?
So that's a two-part question. The province is working on an amendment to the Blue Box program plan right now, which will switch the Ontario Blue Box program over to producer responsibility. The draft of that plan is coming out on Friday, December 22nd for review. We'll bring a report forward to February Public Works Committee with our comments on that for endorsement by Council. The second piece is there are new powers under the City of Toronto Act that will also allow us to do more from a diversion perspective to make sure that buildings, for example, that aren't currently diverting the materials they should be, will have to in the future.
Okay, so those are the new powers that we have under the City of Toronto Act. Are those two reports going to come is that report going to come together, or not?
Yes,
that
through
it
you, Madam
matters?
Speaker, they'll both come in one report in February.
And so our rates this year, just so that people understand, we approved a 5-year, no, you brought forward to us a 5-year rate plan last budget. It was not approved, and you are not bringing us a multi-year rate this year either. Do you think that you will be next year to make sure that we have enough in our budget for the future?
Through you, Madam Speaker, absolutely. For 2019, we will bring forward a multi-year plan. The reason we're not doing it this year is just too much uncertainty in the industry that could impact the city and what those financials will look like.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you know, we're trying to rush the agenda along. No. So, I mean, yes, I know, but, you know, not questions that we repeat the same questions. Deputy Mayor Min Wong.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to go back to this idea of needing to build an organics facility and the cost associated with this. So, is it my understanding that you're open-minded about the idea of having the private sector build this additional organics facility?
Through you, Madam Speaker, absolutely.
I see. How much does it cost to build an organics facility?
The Disco Road facility, which is just in final stages of commissioning, was around $95 million.
So that would be significantly more than that. When did you start, 7 years ago, something like this?
Roughly 7 years ago, yeah.
And you put inflation at 6% a year, thereabouts, right?
Yeah, depending on the capacity, by the time we build it, we would probably budget in the neighborhood of $150 million.
150. So that would be, if we actually went to do an REOI and there was a capacity to do this, we could save $150 million.
Through you, Madam Speaker, certainly we wouldn't have to have that in our capital reserves to fund the program. We would likely pay it back through some sort of operating cost.
Also, you know, if we just built this existing facility, we actually might have the capacity. That's an asset. Private sector would be interested in buying the one that we just built, correct?
Through you, Madam Speaker, they absolutely could be interested in buying it.
Right, and yes, so you could look at that, correct?
Well, through you, Madam Speaker, we need that capacity for
no,
the
I'm just saying that if we were to, the private sector, we could, in fact, sell it, put it up for sale, and then any private sector company, we could enter into an agreement where we would guarantee them capacity, which they would love, and so that would be an interesting arrangement where you would have $150 million in your pocket well, not your notional pocket, to use for other things.
Through you, Madam Speaker, we're not currently looking at selling off any assets or alternative business arrangements around our current assets. We're looking at additional assets or capacity that we'll need in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Palacio.
Thank you, Speaker. To Mr. McCain, with regards to the green beans and the rollout that's taking place, mainly within commercial strips, I've been approached by, for example, residents who live above the stores, and the key question to them is that the green beans, the bigger ones now, are a little bit too big for them to get them to the second and third, fourth floors. Is there any provision that you have in terms of how to deal with that? Because in terms of space, they don't have the space. and also it's a little bit too heavy, especially for when we have seniors there.
Through you, Madam Speaker, yes, we have a team that will go out and assess each of those individual situations, and we'll work with the property owner or property owners to try and find a suitable arrangement that works for both the collection of the material but also for the property owner or the tenant.
Would it be possible, how flexible can your division be in terms of keeping perhaps or allowing the older bins that they were a bit smaller for them to continue using it? Because that's happening almost in every single building throughout our commercial strips, especially in the area that I am, for example, of St. Clair.
Through you, Madam Speaker, we don't allow the use of the old bin, but we have come up with other arrangements in a number of situations like this. We've got some individuals who have gone to a bag-type program and they're working. We've got others who are sharing bins, which is quite an interesting phenomenon where one property will have the recycling bin and another property will have the green bin, and they share their bins.
Okay. In terms of the single family, in terms of the small containers, it's been said that overall homeowners, they keep on downsizing from bigger bins to the smaller ones, and which is helping with the reduction rate. Now, my question in terms of the rebate, in 2007 there was 100% rebate for the small bins, but during the last 10 years that has increased to the present for 2018 to $27.65. I'm trying to figure out how to reconcile that homeowners, they continue to go to the small bins because of the rebate, when the rebate on the other side has been going up. Can you explain that?
Yeah, through you, Madam Speaker. So the rebate, that's a discussion that is part of the tax-based program, and recommendations on what to do with the rebate for the solid waste program this year will have to come through that tax-based program. There haven't been any discussions yet about whether we would lower that rebate again this year or how that'll transpire in the next few months.
With regards to the contamination within the recycling stream, Councillor Davis was asking a few questions, but my question is mainly with MRAP, that's with the multiple residential apartment buildings and also community housing buildings, where the level of contamination has been very noticeable. What are the rates in terms of that level of contamination?
Through you, Madam Speaker, we are seeing probably higher rates of contamination in the multi-residential. We are, even in the single family, seeing in the average of around 25% when we really dig into the bins to see what's there. And in multi-residential, it really comes down to each individual building has its own circumstances and complications. So we're literally going building by building to try and work with those buildings to improve the program.
So you're monitoring that constantly?
We are, yes.
Now, with regards to the commercial sector, where they have the private collection, and it's being said that there is a tremendous level of contamination there within that stream. What's been done to check what's going to the landfill? Because at the end, all of that's been dumped in our landfills in terms of controlling the level of contamination from the commercial private.
So through you, Madam Speaker, if it's being managed by a private contractor, it doesn't flow through our system, it doesn't end up in our landfill. But the commercial services, the properties that we service, we're taking a similar approach as residential, where we're going property by property, inspecting those bins, pushing them back, doing education first, and then slowly moving forward with a more aggressive approach. And
is that the proactive system that you have in terms of inspecting it, or just on complaint basis?
Well, that was your last question.
Through you, Madam Speaker, the proactive piece is getting the messaging, getting the education, trying to work with the properties to do the right thing. And once we do that and we find we're not getting the results that we need, that's when we'll take a more of an enforcement type approach.
Thank you. Councillor Perks.
Thank you. So I want to begin by trying to understand some of how these changes affect Districts 1 and 2, which are operated privately. So with the new inspection requirement on blue bins, that will add operational cost to them, right?
Through you, Madam Speaker, that's all being done by city staff, regardless of where in the city.
So we're now going to have city staff traveling on private trucks checking the blue bins?
No, we travel in advance of the trucks. So we try not to interfere with the collection or operation at all, so there's no operational impact to the contractor. We operate independently. We go in front of the trucks.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That helps me understand. And the programs we're introducing to reduce the amount of waste, they're paid on a per ton basis, so this reduces their income. I understand that correctly?
Through you, Matt, yes, some of the contracts are per ton, which actually does reduce their costs, and that is reflected in certain line items in our budget this year.
Okay. And there have been complaints in the past, I've certainly seen them, about private operators in the City of Toronto and elsewhere trying to compensate when their revenue stream is declining because of that, through things like load watering and diverting what should have been recyclable materials into disposable materials. Given that we are now doing something that reduces their revenue, are we beefing up our inspection to make sure that that doesn't happen?
Through you, Madam Speaker, yes, we are. We already have and had an active contract management team that was out on the route inspecting. Through the new contract that we've got, in particular with the front-end contracts, all bins are now tagged with RFIDs, and those RFID tags are recorded at the point of lift on all bins. So we'll be able to identify that it is our bin that was lifted and where it was lifted real time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a quick question, because I wasn't able to find it specifically outlined in there. Within the staff resources that are in the budget status quo, do we have the ability to continue to interact with the National Zero Waste Council?
Through you, Madam Speaker, yes, we do.
And are we still working on, we did talk about over the long run as part of the long-term waste strategy that we wanted to do a similar sort of event-based strategy to get the whole community beginning to talk about diversion and food waste in a more citywide sense. Are we still working on that over the long run?
Through you, Madam Speaker, right now we're still partnering with Metro Vancouver, so we'll do a joint launch with Vancouver and Toronto. We don't have a plan next year to do that, but certainly for future years, 2019, I'd really like to do a citywide zero waste type.
So that is still part of the multi-year strategy?
It is, yes it is.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Palacio to speak. Councillor Palacio? Councillor Palacio to speak.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I won't be supporting the proposed rate, and for one simple reason is that when it comes to the diversion rate and homeowners across the city, they've been doing an excellent job. They've been doing an excellent job in terms of not only complying with what they've been asking for, but they have gone beyond our expectations, and I think they should be congratulated. When it comes to the rate itself, and the multi-residentials, or the rate that's recommended is 1%, for single-family dwellings, 2%. So the blended rate comes to 1.9. And I have a problem with that in terms of reconciling, because the main problem is with the multi-residential, with apartment buildings that we have all across, that they haven't done a great job in spite of all the efforts that city staff and all of us we've been doing. They haven't done a good job. And on the other hand, homeowners, they have done a terrific job. So it doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to victimize or to penalize those who are actually leading the pack and setting the sample and the pace for something that's been great. So that's one of the reasons that I will not support the rate that's been proposed. And I'm going to be consistent on that. And we are not dealing with the operating budget today, but when it comes to that point, I'll be proposing that the rate be totally frozen, especially when it comes to the small containers for homeowners. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Layton. Councillor Layton. Councillor Mihevc.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have one motion, and it is related to, this is happening quick, which I actually appreciate. I'd ask staff to put it up. And it's related to basically getting some reports going on the processing of organics. So this allows us to get some research done to basically find ways to basically up our game around the area of organics. It's a report request that comes down in the next year. Staff is fine with it. I don't think I need to say more, and in the interest of time, I think I'll sit down.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Robinson has a question for you.
Yeah, because this is the first I've seen this, and I haven't even had time to read it. And so I want to understand what you mean, given consideration to the city's reliance on private processors. Why is that in there, and what do you mean?
Well, there are some, as I understand it, there are some contracts that are reaching their expiry date. And there's a shortage of organic processing. So I don't know what the future will be, but this is what we're asking staff to review and to report out on.
Well, there's a report coming forward to PWIC in January on this. And I guess maybe you weren't in the new year for sure. But so are you somehow saying private versus public?
No. This is not an attempt to
Okay,
publicize.
but you didn't show it to me, so it's the first I've seen it. So I need to ask you this question publicly.
I didn't know that I needed to show you my motions.
No, but, well, I am the chair of garbage, so I need to stand up and make sure. Pardon?
Okay, thank you.
Coveted title, too, Queen of Garbage.
Councillor McMahon.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Madam Speaker. Happy to be with all of you again on this fourth day, long day, hopefully. Not. I have a motion. So, first off, this is all to do with contamination of our blue bins and waste reduction. And this is, if you notice in the serveries, for those of you who use your serveries, we have paper cups. It's 2017 and we have paper cups. And we have creamers. And Councillor Pasternak, as a fine example of the paper cup there, when there are options. So let's ensure, we do have a sign when you walk into City Hall saying we're a zero waste building. I would argue that. I would argue that. And especially when I see a councillor put a sandwich in the blue bin. And I see people putting creamers in the green bins. I think we, on the second floor, we cannot be role models until we educate ourselves further. So I would like you all to support this zero waste in the serveries of city-owned buildings. And the reason, in case you don't care about our landfill site, you might care about the money, and we are paying $5 million a year with any increase to the contamination, with 26% contamination in our blue bin system right now. So it behooves us to be the role model, but it also behooves us to educate our constituents. And it is confusing. People are not sure. Does the coffee cup that Councillor Pasternak is using, that garbage cup that he's helping to destroy the planet with, does that go in the recycling? Where does it go? It goes in the garbage. Where does the lid go? Bottled water, we did a good job with that, so we're just taking it one step further. Now, be forewarned, you should educate your residents that they are going to get warnings about contamination in their blue bins. And we can save $600,000 a year for each percentage, Budget Chief Crawford, each percentage of contamination that we reduce is $600,000 a year and towards more programs. So it's a win-win. Educate your residents, educate yourselves. Let's see a better second floor role model and support my motion. Thank you.
Do have a question by Councillor Holyday.
Thank you, Speaker, and I appreciate Councillor McMahon and what you're doing with this, because I know that Councillor McMahon has lectured me a few times and being next to the servery. But I just wanted to understand it a bit better.
Was that your sandwich?
For instance, I had some yogurt this morning, and I had one of those foil pull lids, and I had to throw that out because I don't think I can recycle that. What does zero waste mean? Does it mean that like there's no more garbage in the serveries? There's no more garbage bin?
Well, that would be the dream, but it's not going to happen overnight, and I just think that we could do better, and it saves us money, which I know you're all about.
Absolutely, and I really heard the part about contamination, and you're absolutely right. We should do better to keep the streams separated as best as we can. We should be showing by example. But I just need to understand, does zero waste mean that we'll phase out the garbage bin? Because there's always residual garbage. There's a little bit, but it's there. I just need to be clear on that, whether or not that includes that.
Right, well, it's close to zero waste as we can get.
But that says zero waste on the...
Yeah, that's the goal. We have a sign downstairs that says we are right now, we are a zero waste facility, which is, I think, inaccurate.
Okay.
Thank you. It doesn't mean to get rid of the garbage bin. Councillor Pasternak.
Smaller.
Yes, thank you,
Clarification.
Madam Speaker. As you may know, there's someone putting cinnamon in the coffee on 8th Street. I'm just wondering whether your motion can make it a cinnamon-free zone as well.
Oh, come on, Councillor Pasternak.
No?
Are you serious?
No.
As long as it's in a reusable mug, I'm okay.
Wow. Okay. Councillor Carroll, quickly.
Oh. Sorry, Madam Speaker. Sorry. I do have one comment to make. That can be addressed later. I just wanted to heads up people. I asked a question about, is there money in there to continue our partnership with the National Zero Waste Council? I also asked, are we going to continue to work our way towards the citywide event? And I want to point out for people again that it's all very well for us to, on a regular basis, get on airplanes and go to other people's conferences. But I want to again reiterate the power of the Zero Waste Day that the City of Vancouver has, and I've been nagging, unfortunately, since the beginning of the last term of office, so of course this was not going to happen. But I have been nagging ever since that we do it for two reasons. Even if you hold that conference and the only people that are in the room are inside ball people that are working in the sector, here's what happens. For the 3 days leading up to it, generally the weekend after it, throughout all of your media outlets, everyone is talking about diversion, diversion, diversion. On an annual basis, every resident in your community is being reminded that food waste is an issue, not just in their homes, but that they ought to, as consumers, be demanding certain things of their of the retailers that they visit on a weekly basis, that they ought to, if they go out to a restaurant, be demanding things of the restaurateurs, that they ought to be talking about it on a daily basis. Because we can pay our staff to do as much as they possibly can with the time and the dollars we give them, but the institutional goodwill that you get and the generation of activity you get from this one annual day. And yeah, it costs a few $1,000s. But we're a huge, huge place with a huge tonnage. If Tristram Stewart, who the leading speaker on food waste, is willing to come to Vancouver, he's more than willing to come to a place that is larger than Vancouver by the entire size of Montreal, and that is Toronto. He's certainly willing to come here and make every one of our residents remember in the way that they used to when every day they were anxiety-ridden because our garbage was going to Michigan. They were talking about garbage and thinking about it all the time. And the diversion was going up, 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 up. What we see now is a certain amount of plateauing. And you can keep giving staff money to send out warnings, to do whatever, but creating an event once a year, and there's a model for it, and people that would partner with you happily to be doing it in the City of Toronto. Right now, all we do is have a web partnership with it, and some of the people from T go over and sit in the room. But I'm cautioning you, because I won't be on the Works Committee next term of office, but it's something that you really have to consider doing. It's in the long-term waste strategy, and you should be prioritizing it, because that is what's going to get every Torontonian working on diversion the way they did when they had that imperative of getting out of Michigan. And you need that. You need that now. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Councillor Crawford.
First of all, I want to thank Jim McKay and all of his team for the work they've been doing over the last year. As I've said with some of the other divisions, the amount of work that goes into what they do is incredible. We see it during the budget process when we look at the numbers, but I just want to thank you and your team for the work you've been doing. Solid waste, like water, one of the important nuts and bolts services that we provide the residents of the City of Toronto, and I think it's one of those services that I know from my office, we always seem to be getting the phone calls when things are going wrong. It's unfortunate. It's just one of the way things are with that. But I want to give you some of the information about solid waste. It's a $405 million operation. 30% of it is in collection and transfer. 34% of it's in processing and transportation. 9% goes into beautification, and the rest goes into capital contributions, education, and enforcement. And I just wanted to highlight for you just some of the accomplishments in this division over the last year. They have successfully done the rollout of the monthly billing for front-end collection services. They've launched the online store to purchase bag tags and pay for service for commercial customers. It started out in Scarborough, and they're working its way across the city, the completion of the Green Bin 2 rollout. The residential contamination pilot project in single-family and multi-res has taken place. And the Solid Waste Association of North American Awards, we have received 2 awards for the long-term waste management strategy and the Green Lane landfill management. But when you go and look at the, Jim McKay did a great job at putting a synopsis of the solid waste budget into the analyst notes. No new fees. No changes to service levels. No new permanent FTE requests. Recommended rate increase is below the rate of inflation. And the 2018 contribution to general waste reserve is sufficient for future capital needs. This is so I want to thank you for the good work you've done. It's a good news budget for the solid waste moving forward for this year. Thank you.
Yay.
Motions on the screen, please. I believe there's just one motion by Councillor Mihevc, right? Oh, and Councillor McMahon. Yes. Yes, we are. Motion by Councillor Mihevc. Recorded? Recorded vote.
Councillor Fragedakis, please, and Councillor Cressy.
The amendment carries 36-3.
Motion by Councillor McMahon. Recorded.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Kelly, please. And Councillor Carroll.
The amendment carries 33-6.
Item as amended, recorded vote.
Councillor Cole?
Pruitt.
This is the item?
Councillor Bailao, please. Councillor Karygiannis, Councillor Carroll.
Councillor Crisanti, when you're seated, please.
We're voting on the item.
Councillor Karygiannis.
Councillor Crisanti, please. Thank you.
The item as amended carries 37-4.
Our next item is page 5, PG 24.6, Portland's Planning Initiatives. Councillor Shiner.
So right after we finished with the agenda this morning, I spoke with Mr. Lintern and I've spoken with Mr. Williams and asked them to draft some motions to me, which I don't think will be controversial, but they haven't completed them yet, so I won't be able to place them or advance circulate it. So if we could hold this down for a short while so they could complete them for me and still go forward with it before lunch, it would be appreciated, because I can't place them.
Okay, how long is it going to take for these amendments?
I was told they're coming shortly.
Because this was a timed item.
And I asked, Madam Speaker, and I asked for them this morning.
Well,
and I've done my due diligence on them, and I'm waiting to see the drafts of the motion. I'm asking for no other courtesy than anyone else would have, and I don't think the motions will be controversial either.
well,
So, I just have to stand it down when it comes to me speaking to wait for the motions as well. So,
okay,
if we
Councillor,
could maybe 15 minutes
okay,
from now.
Councillor Shiner. Okay, so Councillor Shiner is asking that this be held down to the staff bring forward his motions. I don't understand when this was a timed item why the staff don't have the motions prepared. Yeah, well, okay, just a sec, Councillor Fragedakis. I just need to do it. We're going to hold it down? Okay, all right. Okay, Councillor Fragedakis.
Sorry, I just had a question on a point of order. So the whole item is being held down, or are there opportunities for people to ask questions on that item and other people to speak? So I just wanted some clarity around that, procedurally.
Well, if... Okay.
Sorry, I was actually waiting to hear from the chair,
Well,
David.
Councillor
Sorry.
Fragedakis, the whole item is held down until the motions are ready.
Okay.
All right? Councillor Ford, you had your name there. What was that for? Okay. Do we... Now that we have a few minutes, I know that you untimed it, but did you want to deal with it?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so
That's
why don't
why
we...
I was really asking.
Okay, why don't we go to page 3, PW 24.5, Councillor Fragedakis.
I don't know if anyone has any questions, but if they don't, then I have two motions I'd like to
Do you have any questions, Councillor Fragedakis?
I don't.
No?
I just have motions.
Does anybody have any questions? This is on the speed limit on Bayview Avenue. Okay, put your name up on the screen, please. Councillor Burnside, questions?
Thank you. Through you to staff. This section of Bayview Avenue, are there any homes, schools, businesses, or is parking even allowed?
Through you, no.
Thank you. What's the engineering of this road in terms of engineered speed?
Through you, engineering speed usually refers to a speed that is approximately 10 kilometers over the speed limit, the posted speed limit, to allow for some variation. The speed limit on Bayview was dropped from 70 kilometers per hour to 60 in 2011. And through the RSP, the road safety plan, it was dropped further for some continuity because along the route there are some component pieces that are 50 kilometers per hour at either end, and then it was 60 in the middle, so we moved it continuity for the whole thing. And then we are now looking at bringing it back, so it's approximately designed for about 70 kilometers per hour design speed.
Design speed. And is there a, on the bottom portion of this part of Bayview Avenue, is there a separated bike and pedestrian path, if you will, and and if so, is the separation bollards or is it a robust metal barrier?
So there's a robust Jersey barrier and metal barricade that goes from Pottery Road down past the Brickyard. That was designed and put in place in 2016.
And to confirm, there's no parking allowed on any of this stretch of Bayview, correct?
There's no parking allowed on any of this stretch.
And if you look at the map, would you agree that for this entire stretch of Bayview, you either have a wooded hills or a rail line and a river, except for the brickworks?
Through you, that is correct.
Okay. Was there any accident data? I know you said that that this was an exercise in continuity. Was there any accident data that would have supported a 50-kilometer speed limit?
There's been one killed or serious injury accident along this stretch between 2013 and 2017 that was a result of a motorcycle and a U-turning vehicle colliding.
So nothing to do with speed?
No.
How many kilometers of roadway in the city are 60 kilometers?
Approximately 500 kilometers of roadway.
500. Okay. And in terms of the original Vision Zero that came out of Sweden, one of the important elements was engineering, and is that correct?
Correct. Engineering, enforcement, and education are the three typical pillars of a Vision Zero program.
So the engineering really has to mesh with the speed limit?
It has to complement, yep.
Complement it, that's a better word, thanks. And in your experience, when you have unrealistically low speed limits, is there a, do some drivers actually then start weaving in and out of traffic, and does it lead to frustration?
Through you, often that we see that drivers will drive the speed that's comfortable for the road for them. So in terms of individual behavior of weaving, I couldn't answer, but certainly drivers will tend to drive faster if the design speed of the road does not match up with the speed limit.
Okay, and then what is the average speed traveled on Bayview?
The average speed along, there we go. Between Pottery Road to the Don Valley, the volume is about a little over 23,000 vehicles per day, and the average speed is 76. Don Valley to Rosedale, 30,000 vehicles per day, and the average speed is 80. And Rosedale to River, about just under 19,000 vehicles, and 74 is the operational speed that we've observed.
And you've had no accident data that was any way related to speed?
Thankfully, not at this time.
Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Fragedakis, questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. So some questions came to my mind while Councillor Burnside was asking his questions. So I was wondering, through you, Madam Speaker, why was the speed limit reduced in 2011 on Bayview Avenue from Pottery Road south?
Through you, the drop in 2011 was done in conjunction with the installation of the trail and the removal of the center barrier. So that sort of more formal separation of the trail corridor from the roadway and removing of that center barrier was why they modified the speed limit at that time.
Okay, thank you. So, you mentioned in your question and answers with Councillor Burnside that no parking is allowed on this stretch of Bayview Avenue. I was wondering, are you aware if parking occurs on this stretch of Bayview Avenue?
Through you, yes, parking does occur. There's parking that is not within the bylaw, but happens, people typically attending the Brickworks, by understanding.
And how regularly does that parking happen?
Through you, I think on the weekends, pretty routinely.
So we have lots of people parking illegally on Bayview Avenue routinely because of the farmers markets at the Brickworks, is that correct?
On the, which side? Through you. Through you on the west side, proximate to the Brickworks.
Okay. You said that we had 500 kilometers of roadway in the city of Toronto that was 60 kilometers per hour. So how many kilometers of roadway are there in the city of Toronto total?
Little over 5,300.
So that's a small fraction is actually at 60 kilometers per hour. Is that correct?
Through you, it is a smaller. It's what is it? 10%. Our typical roadway speeds, the biggest tranche is at 50 kilometers per hour.
Okay. How familiar are you with the Brickworks facility and the transportation challenges of that site?
Through you, I've been there a few times. I've been there for a bike ride, and I've been there sort of just driving by. And I certainly, it is a location that is much more oriented towards a different type of use than it was originally designed for. Today, right? It's a market, and people come there on the weekends, and people come through the wooded areas to get to the Brickworks.
So you would agree that there are a lot more people on this stretch of Bayview Avenue than when the roadway was designed, and the use of that particular property has attracted a lot more people.
Through you, and that yes, and I think that's why we put the trail in the way that we configured it, and why we put the signal at that intersection, because that's really the heaviest use.
So from your couple of visits and perhaps some anecdotal information around what's happening there at 550 Bayview Avenue, would you say that you have observed perhaps pedestrians walking on Bayview south of Pottery Road, or actually south of Moore Avenue?
Through you, I've observed them personally at the intersection and along that trail corridor. I have heard anecdotally that pedestrians will park and then they will walk to the Brickworks.
Right. And sometimes they're parking illegally on Bayview, and sometimes they're parking other places, like perhaps Nesbitt Drive, and walking down.
Through you, I would imagine that's accurate.
Given the restrictions on the site of the Brickworks for parking.
Through you, yeah, there is a significant parking lot, but it's a very popular spot.
Right. I'm not sure if you're aware of the public transportation or limited public transportation to the Brickworks site from the TTC's perspective. I know you're not the TTC, but I'm wondering if you're aware of the situation on Bayview with respect to transit.
Through you, my understanding is there is some transit, but not probably as frequently as some would like to see.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Karygiannis. Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm just wondering, I read the report, and I'm wondering if the report, given the request to review the speeds, does it allow, when transportation is doing it, to look at it in the context of the future? Or do you have to just look at the conditions today?
Through you, we have set the speeds and done the analysis based on the conditions at the time that we made those changes. But looking into the future, we certainly are looking, I believe, in 2019 to do a more thorough analysis of the Bayview corridor that would examine that, including the ramps to the DVP, and look at current conditions. So certainly that's not something that we are embarking on right at this moment, but we have plans to do so in the future. Yep.
So now I really have some questions, Madam Speaker, because then I look at the cost of making another change and wonder why we're doing that. The reason I ask is there's a lot of focus on the top end of the stretch, the change as a result of the brickworks, but at the bottom end of the stretch, we also have a new condition in the last couple of years that wasn't there. A tremendous number of residents are now there. And so when I'm on it, I see increased cycling. I even see increased pedestrians that are walking along the guardrail. If I come down Rosedale Valley Road, which is about in the middle of the whole thing, to turn up, to head back to the suburbs, there are people on the street that weren't there. It used to be just homeless people were there, and that was sad, but they were standing in a safe place. So lots of travel. So I'm wondering if the investigation was only looking at cars today, or can we look at, is the future increased cycling, is the future increased pedestrianism, and if so, would you just be looking at what speed should cars be going, or would you be looking at that engineered design may not suit future purposes? If we're going to have increased complete streets types of needs.
Through you, a future study would certainly take all of those indicators into consideration, including changes in land use, changes in patterns to the area, modifications in how people are traveling there, and look to match design speed with what those conditions are going to be in the future. So certainly we would take a longer view. We'd work with our colleagues in city planning to take a longer view when we put an EA together for that.
And your study would be looking at all of the travelers and all of the modes?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
My apologies.
Thank you. Councillor Wong Tam?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to have a fuller understanding about what's before us on the same agenda as Vision Zero, and yet on your report you're recommending that we actually increase the speed again on Bayview Avenue. How do you square up those two?
Through you, Vision Zero as a road safety plan has a number of different component pieces. I think when they matched up the they put together the speed limit to match the north and south ends of Bayview for continuity. I think at that time the hope was that people would obey the posted speed limit. What we've seen is that people are traveling over the posted speed limit. The design speed of the road, as we've discussed, does not match up with the behaviors out there. We don't have adequate enforcement to be able to keep people at that speed, and so there's an interest in looking in the future at a more complete streets analysis of that corridor. The place where we are indicating that the speed could go back up to 60 is where we've actually identified and put in place some protections for pedestrians and cyclists along the roadway with barricades, etc., as well as a fully signalized intersection to get to the main destination, which is the brickworks.
So I think it might be, I mean, am I correct to understand that, that oftentimes posting a sign to state the limit of the speed doesn't always do the trick, which is why you're exploring those additional measures?
Through you, signs are very important and critical and necessary, but the design of the road and the sign have to match to get compliance without a lot of enforcement.
And it's correct, based on the earlier responses I've heard, is that it's not just cars that are on Bayview Avenue or using Bayview Avenue or crossing across Pottery Road. You have cars that are moving at high speeds. You have cyclists at all ages and all abilities. You also have pedestrians and anybody else who might be trying to traverse the trails. Is that correct?
Through you, yes.
And so you're trying to avoid conflict of all those users to make sure that you have a safer travel corridor.
Through you, yes, and again, part of the reason why the only area that we're looking at to modify the speed limit is where there is already a separated trail facility for cyclists and pedestrians, as well as a fully signalized intersection to get to the brickworks.
And what would you say is the condition of that existing bike path right now?
Through you, I wrote it not too long ago, I want to say about 3 months ago, and I felt that the separation was certainly adequate from the traffic.
Could it be improved in any way? Was it a smooth, clearly marked trail? Were there any breaches and breaks along the separation?
Through you, it was certainly clearly marked in terms of pavement. We can take a look at the pavement markings to ensure that they're fresh. I don't recall any particular in unevenness in surface, and we were there actually to launch the opening of the new trail corridor that's beyond the bridge. So
and I was there with you on that ride, but it was actually a very short ride. It didn't complete. It didn't capture the entire area that's captured in this report. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was just from the brickworks through to the new trail.
So it would be worth a further physical investigation of the entire stretch to make sure that the separation is as fortified as it can be, and that everything is in a good state of order, and where there's gaps, it can be improved and closed up.
Through you, yes, I think that's
so. A motion to that extent would be helpful.
Through you.
And and when do you think you could report back if we were to ask you to do that work to investigate the conditions of the existing bike lanes?
We can just undertake that review. We're happy to report back either through PWIC or as the council directs us to do so in 2018.
Okay, so if I place a motion, just because it makes it easier to track, if we place a motion to have it come back June, July, August, would that work for you?
Through you, yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
I would like to acknowledge, I guess the students are leaving. The students from Don Mills Collegiate, grade 9 students, they're in Ward 34, and Deputy Mayor Min Wong's ward. Welcome, students. Councillor Karygiannis.
Madam Speaker, my questions have been answered. Thank you. I took my name off.
Councillor Torresi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. South of River Street, it will remain 50 kilometers?
Through you, Madam Speaker, yes.
Are there any traffic measures that can ensure that there's transition from the 60 to 50 along that east side of, south side of River Street?
Through you, when we go out to take a look at all the markings, we can certainly ensure there's enough advanced signage on that transition.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This particular report attracted some attention because we were doing something unusual. We were raising the speed limit. Can you offer some comment? And I know we covered it, but I just want to make sure this is really clear. You know, does staff go around making things safer or more dangerous? Like, do you earnestly believe that we're actually achieving safety, and why?
Through you, safer for certain. That's always our goal, is to make things safer.
Agreed.
And I also think that we want to ensure as much as we can that there's compliance with existing rules and regulations.
Right. I know one of the theories that I'd heard before, and Madam Speaker, if I can just ask to just get people to settle down a little bit so I can hear myself.
We've got to settle down ourselves. Francis.
Time.
Yes, Councillor Holiday.
May I request that the chamber settle down a little bit?
Yeah,
so
well,
we
I'm
can
trying to, and you know, it's hard.
Thank you.
So, you know.
I'll try again.
Well, okay.
One of the things that we had spoken before at various committees about was speed differential. And I wonder if you could elaborate on that concept. And the basic understanding I have is that when drivers, there's a large difference between the posted speed limit and the actual behavior of the drivers on the street. You actually introduce some dangers because cars are operating at various speeds and we result in conflict. I wonder if you could elaborate on that a little bit. Did I get that right?
Well, through you, certainly, as I mentioned earlier, the posted speed limit and the design speed of the roadway are not the same. And part of the reason that is to typical engineering practice is because you want to give drivers who will they'll drive in a manner in which they're comfortable given their surroundings, the ability to have some flexibility in there within certain limits for safety, as you mentioned before. So people will tend to drive the speed that they feel comfortable. And there's a lot of different factors related to that. Posted speed limit is one of them for people who are keen to comply. Adjacent land uses and adjacent sort of distractions or issues that happen outside of the actual roadway is another one. If there's a lot of people crossing, if there's a lot of land uses and buildings close to the side of the road, that helps to provide some additional modulation of driver behavior typically.
So we use statistics in the reports to describe the behavior of drivers. We don't need to go into that, but would it be fair to say that your observations are statistically significant? And when you say comfortable about the behavior of drivers, is it also fair to say that generally speaking, drivers at a statistically significant amount behave safely on a road because they intuitively know how to safely operate a vehicle? I'm not talking about the outliers, but en masse, drivers drive at a speed because it's generally safe for that road.
Yes, typically.
Okay, and would that be fair to say that's the case here? I know that the speeds are a little higher, but for some reason, something about the geometry of this road means that those cars are moving safely. And the issue we've got is there's a big delta between the posted speed limit that some people will endeavor to comply and the statistically significant amount of cars that are moving at a generally safe speed.
So I think we have a couple of statistically interesting components. We have posted speed limit and the speed that people are operating at, which is significantly higher than the posted speed limit of 50 kilometers. We have land uses in transition, so there's more people who are, as Councillor Carroll pointed out, living on the south end of the corridor, accessing the brickworks, and then we have people, we don't have a very high collision rate, which implies that people are operating within the tolerances of the roadway design.
So with the findings of the Public Works Committee, are you fully supportive of what the Public Works Committee found on this, which was substantially matched to your report? Is there anything that needs to be changed coming out of the Public Works Committee that would increase safety even more, or do you find that the recommendations before us are increasing safety on that street?
We support the report. We also support the view to look at changing conditions in this corridor over time and take a more comprehensive look at it.
Of course. And one last quick thing. I know at committee we made a slight change. We changed the Pottery Road North to Pottery Road South. Is staff fully supportive of that, and that is a further safety enhancement?
Yes, and in fact, in part because of the design of the trail corridor, that is south of there. We're also making some modifications to one of the bus stops north of there. Thank you. To assist. Yep.
I have two motions, if staff could put them up on the screen. The first is to support the speed limit reduction that was made as part of the road safety plan and maintain it for 50 kilometers from the southerly intersection of Pottery Road to River Street ramp. And the second is actually that Council direct the General Manager of Transportation to undertake an operational review and identify opportunities for safety and operational changes for all road users, pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, etc., that reflect a 50 km/h operating speed of Bayview between Moore and Rosedale Valley Road, excluding the Don Valley Parkway interchange, in advance of the broader functional planning study of the Bayview Avenue extension planned for 2019. The second motion really speaks to why we find ourselves in this place, because in 2015, this council passed a motion to have a functional study of Bayview Avenue, and it was to start in 2017. As Evergreen Brickworks has started their operation there in 2010, the site at 550 Bayview Avenue has become increasingly popular, and it attracts over 3,000 visitors every weekend to the site, both the residents and visitors from all corners of the city. And they arrive actually via all modes of travel, including transit, cycling, and on foot. But access to the site is still heavily prioritizing motor vehicles. So pedestrians instinctively take the shortest route to their destination to save energy and time, and people traveling to the brickworks on foot from the north and the east tend to gravitate to the west side of Bayview Avenue. This is not the side where the multi-use trail is, because that's on the east side, but the design of this site is attracting people to the west side. The multi-use trail on the east side takes them 300 meters past the north entrance to the Evergreen site before they can safely cross the road at a stoplight. And this puts them again on the west shoulder alongside vehicular traffic with only a painted line designating their lane. So should it be on the west side? Perhaps not, but the geography and the roadway design encourages it. We've said that we have a commitment to the Vision Zero road safety plan to eliminate all deaths and reduce serious injuries on Toronto's roadways, and we must meet that with concrete action. Everyone has a right to feel safe when getting around this city, whichever modality they choose, whether it's transit, car, foot, or by bicycle. And Bayview Avenue is the primary route to the Evergreen site, notably from the east and the north. And visitors, like I said, have arrived by all modes of travel, including by foot. And the safety of all travelers on Bayview Avenue, notably vulnerable road users, should actually take priority over shaving off a few seconds of car drivers' travel time. I urge Council to consider the safety of the vulnerable road users on Bayview Avenue and oppose the increase of the speed limit to 60. From 50 on this stretch of the road. We should be supporting this motion to look at what kind of temporary measures we can take, any operational changes we could be making to Bayview Avenue to ensure that. Because really, as more people choose to visit this area, as well as the enhanced Lower Don Valley Park system, and the mayor was there earlier this summer where we kicked off and a very much needed and very much loved set of improvements to the Lower Don Trail. We're just encouraging more and more people to be down there, both on foot and by bike, and the situation is quite dire. I've attended many vigils in this city, sadly, and memorial rides over the last couple of years for pedestrians and cyclists that have been killed on our streets. Please, let's not wait for another tragedy to make significant safety improvements to Bayview Avenue.
Thank you. Councillor Karygiannis.
Call the question, Madam Speaker.
Yay.
The question's been called. Yeah, the local councillor has to. The question's been called. Recorded vote.
Councillor Kelly, please. Councillor Shiner, when you're seated, please.
The motion to call the question does not carry. The vote is 7 to 31.
Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if it is a good one. I hope so. Madam Speaker, I'd like to place the motion on the screen. This motion I actually had advance circulated at our last meeting when this item was deferred. It is actually very much in the same spirit as Councillor Fragedakis' motion. I think as local councillors, ward councillors, as well as adjacent ward councillors, communities that are all butting that area, we share very, very similar concerns. What I'd like to do, Madam Speaker, is just to is just to draw the connections between what we're trying to do here and also from a holistic perspective, what we're trying to do with Vision Zero. I'm very cognizant that the staff are trying to put the best foot forward with recommendations that they believe are correct by increasing the speed. But I'm having a difficulty understanding how increasing the speed can actually create a safer condition for an area that has multiple users and multiple trail users. It's become very apparent that Bayview Avenue is not just a fast route for people going north and south, trying to bifurcate the city, but it's also becoming a very active recreational trail, which was purposefully and intentionally designed, and we are now actively programming to encourage more users. What I have concerns with, Madam Speaker, is that if we're going to be posting a speed of 60, we know that people are traveling closer to 70 and 80. That is just the way it works in the city. It's very difficult for people to sort of adhere to the actual speeds to the road. Perhaps it's about the physical design and configurations of the road. It's about how to place more traffic controls. But I do think that it is, to me, very counterintuitive to raise the speed when we're actually trying to create a safer condition. The other thing is that this particular portion of Bayview runs from Pottery to the River Street ramp. And I actually have been on that road many times in many different capacities, and by car and sometimes by bicycle. And it is not contiguous as it goes through. And it's very misleading, especially for cyclists and for trail users, when it's not contiguous and we don't have clear separation. So there are places where you do feel safe when you're cycling, and then all of a sudden the separation disappears, or perhaps it was there, but it was damaged and was never adequately and replaced in a timely fashion, and then all of a sudden you're exposed to vehicles flying right beside you at 75 to 80 kilometers. And if you ever want to feel the moment that you're about to face imminent death, you just, you're relying on infrastructure that's got to work for you, and then all of a sudden it disappears. So that's really what my motion is trying to do, and hopefully you'll be able to reflect on not just the way you use it, perhaps the way all Torontonians are being encouraged to use this. And it's not just about the brickworks, it's also about the connection to the Lower Don and the waterfront trail, which is where this road eventually leads to, is very highly used. And I know that there's more and more people that are coming from the north end of the city using this trail, trying to connect to the waterfront trail. And the time and time again, I've heard stories about how scared it is when that trail breaks off, and then there's some discontinuation, and even worse when the separations disappear. Thank you very much.
Councillor Robertson, did you have a question? Okay, Councillor.
I'd like to see the motion because I'm confused.
If we can put the motion on the screen, please.
Thank you. Because my understanding from staff, and they spoke about this during the Q&A, is there are some of the most, I guess, heavy, I don't know what the word is technically, concrete barriers between the bike lanes and the motorists. And so I'm very confused why this motion would be put forward. It's misleading because it indicates that there isn't. And it's some of the best bike infrastructure that we have that's actually internationally that's using to separate those two road users. So I think this should A, be out of order, or certainly be identified that it's very misleading when the General Manager of Transportation has just gotten up and said that this is beautifully separated, some of the best separations we have in the city. So my question to you is, why would you put this forward and mislead people to think that it's not separated between the two road users?
Your question. Okay. Councillor Robinson, can you retract from saying misleading, please?
I will happily retract that.
Okay. Councillor Wong Tam, can you please answer the question?
Yes, I'll do the best that I can, Madam Speaker. When I was questioning the General Manager of Transportation about the condition of the of Bayview, we talked, and she did reply that she was there not too long ago. I was also there with her, along with the Mayor and Councillor McMahon and a few others, when we were actually launching the Lower Don new connections. But this particular report actually speaks to Pottery Road to the River Street ramp. And we did not, and I know that, that the General Manager did not ride all the way down there. I actually did, because I just continued with my journey, and I cut across on the waterfront trail. And it's actually, the stretch that you speak about, it actually is in good condition. But unfortunately, it isn't continued all the way down to the waterfront trail. So if there is a way to improve some of those separations, then we should. And we know that over a period of time, things do get damaged. And we just want a set of eyes out there from the staff to take a look.
But it leads people to believe that it's 60 in that area that you're referencing, and indeed it is not that high a speed. Are you aware of that?
No, the staff recommendation to designate. No, is to delete the first recommendation. So the recommendation from staff is to increase the speed back from 50 to 60. I'm saying take it out and leave it at 50, and then I just place another motion on top of that. It's not, I thought it was a...
But your motion indicates that it's not separated, but it is separated. I believe the term is jersey barriers, which are...
Yeah, there are jersey
indestructible, quite frankly.
Okay, why don't you...
Between the two.
Well,
okay, why don't you just go offline and clarify that with staff?
Sure.
Councillor Fragedakis.
Yes, thanks, Madam Speaker. I just wanted a clarification of Councillor Wong Tam's motion. So there's currently a portion of the east side of Bayview with jersey barriers, and then the rest of it is a portion is wooden posts with metal.
Yeah, it's
pieces.
Inconsistent. Yes.
Are you talking about also looking at some kind of improvements on the west side as well? Because there's nothing at present on the west side of Bayview.
Yeah, and thank
Whereas
you.
Actually.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor. I'm going to suggest that perhaps staff look at both sides while they're physically out there. And you just pointed out the fact that there is inconsistency to the quality of those separations. So thank you.
So just to be clear, you're asking for them to look at the entire condition?
I had never intended for staff to look at one portion and not the other, but just simply as it relates to this report, that the lengthened section is all I wanted staff to look at while they're out there.
Okay.
And you can look, while you're there, you can look on the east and west side, correct? Thank you.
Councillor Holliday, clarification.
Thank you, Speaker. I just want to be certain, through you to the councillor, that the intent is to nullify the staff's advice, to strike out the recommendation to change the speed limit.
That is correct. So my motion is to delete recommendation number 1, and I placed a second amendment.
Yeah, so the answer is yes.
So staff are wrong. Staff are wrong that it's not safer to change the speed limit.
Okay,
Councillor.
Is that, just staff are wrong. Is that the intent of the motion?
Okay, Councillor Holliday, come on. Okay. Councillor Matlow to speak.
I have a motion, Madam Speaker. What this motion does is addresses the fact that within the staff report, while the focus is on vehicle speed, there's nothing at all that addresses pedestrian safety, and I think it's important to ensure that whatever is done, it's done holistically to make sure that all users of the road are safe. I agree.
I don't believe that that's part of, that's not part of the report, Councillor Matlow.
That's the point, that it's not in the report, and I'd like to add that as an issue that's addressed.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Speaker. I'm going to be really brief. I don't know why we bother to ask for reports on speed limits if we just take them and we throw them aside and council just decides, we'll just mark this little speed here, this little speed there. It's an entire department of transportation professionals and engineers with a heck of a lot more collective experience than we have here, telling us how to make it safer or not safer, and over again, we just rip up those reports and do whatever we think we should do.
That's your dad's speech.
Councillor Palooza, it is, but because he was right. The answer is we should just depoliticize some of this stuff and listen to advice. I don't get it.
What about Richmond and Simcoe?
Councillor Carroll.
Very quickly, Madam Speaker, I'll support these requests for studies, but I just point out that on the fourth day, if we want to hurry, we really ought to listen. What we heard from staff is that we're looking at the speed report that was asked for, and asked for quickly. We have a motion about the speed because the local councillor has a different take on it. Be that as it may, there already is a study coming to us in 2019, I heard from staff, that will really look at the design of the road, holus bolus, and all of the travelers on it. So what we want, the consideration of everyone, a complete streets type of approach, actually is on its way. So I'll vote for these studies, but we're now moving motions that actually aren't even needed. We've already requested what these motions now request again.
Councillor Burnside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Bayview extension. If never there was a candidate for a 50-kilometer-hour per speed limit, it's this part of Bayview Avenue. Let's look at the evidence. We heard that the engineering of this road is closer to 80 than it is 50. We heard that the average speed, I believe, is about 78 kilometers per hour. We also heard there are no schools, there are no homes, there are no places of worship, there are no regular shops. We also know that on either side it's either hills and trees, or it's a rail line with a river. Oh, but we did hear that there is a place called the Brickworks that is busy, maybe above capacity, even though we are still trying to encourage people to cycle and walk, one day of the week for about 5 hours. So what do they do? Well, they park illegally. They park on the Bayview extension where they're not supposed to park. If you're going to walk in a live lane, I got news for you. Whether you get hit at 50 or 60, it's not a good thing. There are 386 parking spots at the Brickworks. Plenty of parking for all but maybe 5 hours. We also know that a lot of driving is about perception. And if you think you're getting slowed down and you get frustrated, what do? You weave in and out of traffic, and then you try to make your speed up in our neighborhoods, which is really the dire situation that Councillor Fragedakis talked about. Bayview Avenue on this stretch is not a dire situation. We heard there's no accident data other than an anomaly of someone making a U-turn in front of a motorcycle that had nothing to do with speed. The sight lines are good. We actually have, for the pedestrians and the cyclists at the bottom part, we actually have a robust separation and a proper cycling and pedestrian trail. How much better can it get? And when we talk about the road safety plan, what's the biggest hurdle to introducing and to moving forward with our road safety plan? Resources. So why are we going to spend more resources on this stretch of Bayview Avenue doing more enhancements when the average speed is 78, there's no data to support anything less than 60, and there's no need to spend our scarce resources in this area when we have a lot of serious situations and death elsewhere on our road system. I encourage everyone in this chamber to support the staff report, put the speed limit back up to 60 kilometers per hour.
Thank you. Okay, so should we put the motions? We don't. Recorded vote.
Councillor Mihevc, please. Thank you.
Councillor Lee, please.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 16 to 23.
Okay, next motion. Pardon? There's nothing to split. Do you want a recorded vote on this? Oh, Councillor Wong Tam said yes. Recorded vote.
Members, we canceled the previous vote, so your lights may be still lit up. So please be sure you've pressed one of your buttons.
Councillor Ainsley, Councillor Cressy, please. Councillor Cole, please.
Councillor Perks, please. Councillor Lee, Councillor Matlow, Councillor Davis. Members, we had to cancel the previous vote, so your lights may be lit up.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 19 to 20.
Okay, next motion. Recorded vote. Yeah, this should be redundant, isn't it? Huh? This is asking for a study, but we just voted, though, on the staff recommendation. Yeah. So hold on. I believe that.
Mayor Tory, please.
Okay, recorded vote. Different parameters. That's what I was told. But there is this, you're correct.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 18 to 21.
Okay, what other one? Okay, next motion is by Councillor Matlow. Who asked for recorded? Recorded vote.
Councillor Kelly, please. Councillor Lee, Councillor Shiner, Councillor Perruzza, Councillor DiGiorgio, please.
The motion carries 32-7.
Okay, item as amended. On favor? Carried. So are we ready for page 5, PG 24.6, Portland's planning initiatives? Okay. Pardon? Okay, hold on, please, one at a time. Councillor Shiner, have you submitted in your motions to the clerk?
This item now.
Oh.
I didn't hear you. What was that?
I am prepared to go forward with this item now.
Okay. So do we have, let's start with questions to staff. Are there any questions to staff? No? Okay, so Councillor Shiner.
As chair of the committee, I'd like to go last.
Councillor Fletcher.
For what?
Did you call
the IT? Yeah, but I'm going to.
Councillor Fletcher? Okay. Councillor Fletcher, you're on.
Yes, I have these two motions that are technical in nature. Speaker, both given to me by staff, not ones that I asked for. And one is for the Broadview extension north of Lakeshore through the Unilever site to bring that into the official plan amendment 387 to the Toronto official plan will prevail north of Lakeshore. And also when Councillor Kelly and I yesterday moved the Shoreline purchase, it's required by us to find another site for the original buyer of that site. So that is here, and adding some parkland into that site, which is number B. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm going to ask you all to support the Portland's planning framework. And I do want to thank those from Waterfront Toronto that are here and our staff that are here, and say thank you for thousands of hours, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who have worked on this. It has gone through extensive consultation. We actually had a very interesting formula, which was not only a stakeholders group, but also a land users group, which was the first time that I believe we've done that. And of note, we're also doing that at the Unilever site. So it's a new way to do that because they're not always exactly the same interests. And it was, people were canvassed. This is the actual final time this is coming before us. We did have this before us in May, and then I believe to the July Council. It was in May at P&G, and it was there in May that I did add into this framework that we look to have the most affordable housing on Villiers Island of any waterfront development to date, and that would also include co-op housing, it would include TCHC, it would include RGI, it would be very fulsome in the application of affordability on the waterfront, and also be a larger percentage than we would normally have. I just want to touch on two things. One is Villiers Island, and since we now have the funding, technical, everything going to start for the new river, which is the flood protection for all of Leslieville, all of our employment area, and all of the Portlands, and the development of fantastic new green spaces there on our 75 acres of land that we're putting into the new river, that we also now have the opportunity to start to plan in great detail Villiers Island, which will be coming along as the first residential area within the Portlands. Of course, there's West Don Lands is still building out. We have other areas in the Keating Channel area that are still building out, but this will be that first planned community. And it's pretty exciting, all of the factors that were placed in here as far as environmental, housing, and many other things that I know you'll see as this rolls out and over the years, because it is years. This is a plan for 50 years. Don't forget, on the Leslie side of the Portlands, there is the Ashbridges Bay Sewage Treatment Plant, where 75% of all of the sewage in the city goes to that plant. It is a 22-acre site of all of the home of the new streetcars. There are cement plants in order to build out the city. There are still industrial uses in the Portlands. Which brings me to the issue of the support of the film industry for the Portlands planning framework. And I have heard very clearly, loudly and clearly, with letters over the number of days and weeks, and from people here in the chambers, that they like this, they've been part of it. It meets the needs of their industry. It meets the needs of our growing residential component on the Portlands, and they believe it is they've been part of that, public has been part of that, and it deserves to be passed as is. So I'm going to ask you to please support this as is. You're supporting the new river. You're supporting the takedown of the Gardner, which will have access to this area. You're supporting the beginning of Villiers Island and fantastic new parks in the neighborhood. And you're supporting one of Toronto's top 3 industries, the film industry, at $2.2 billion, 35,000 people who work there, and stabilizing it. So that is what's before us. I would ask you to support my technical amendments and, as is, pass the plan without any further amendments. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. Councillor Shiner.
Can I get the overhead on, Madam Speaker? Please start my time when it's live and I can go.
Okay. Are you ready?
I'm waiting for the overhead.
Well, I'm not the one that controls that.
Either am I.
Just turn it on over there, the on button. Where's Chuck?
So,
He's going to push the on button. There.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm trying to see it up top, Madam. Please. Madam Speaker, we're trying to minimize, and due respect before I start, my colleague, Councillor Fletcher, and I are trying to work on something, minimize the debate here in Council, find ways to work together. So please, if you could just allow me to have my 5 or 7 minutes without rushing it, we'll get through it.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so, Madam Speaker, I put up on here the map of the proposal that we have in front of us for the new Villiers Island, for South River, for the McCleary District, which looks like residential, and that's the current Pinewood and the rest of the site. Because it is a vision for the future, it's a 50-year plan, but the concern that I had with it, and I think my colleague, Councillor Ticiano, is that it's going to come to fruition at the end of the 50 years instead of at the beginning of the 50 years, and it wasn't doing enough for the film industry and for residential down there. And when you put a planning framework in line, you try and control many times the property owners that are down there with your planning framework and your zoning bylaws, but if you look at the map, purple are municipally owned. Orange is federally owned, yellow is provincially owned. So as far as privately owned down there, there's very few pieces of land that are actually privately owned down there. So we have a wonderful opportunity. The land use direction in here shows us to go forward with residential over here, pick mixed use over here, mixed over here, and these areas here as your film use. This one already is film because that's Pinewood. So we're left with this piece and this piece. The problem we found with it is that happens to be, and this happens to be privately owned. So the only actual film area that we were talking of new was a small piece over here, with the exception of the mixed use, which is to the north over here and this piece over here. And that's where Councillor Ticiano and I and some others had some concerns at the meeting as to how this would actually go forward. So we looked at that and tried to see what you could do with that. and really understood that if this is again the film lands, there are two very important pieces of land to the north of the studio that are actually owned by Toronto Portland Company and could go forward for studios now. They could go forward for further studios, and I know that economic development is working with one party to see if they can bring it forward. That would only be part of the site. What we wanted to see was all of it going forward as quickly as we could, hence the concerns that we had, because these lands over here, and I'll go back to this map over here, right over here, that has to be Studio 2. Pinewoods being Studio 1, if you really want to help the film industry, you have to give them the land that it says in the Hempson Consulting Report, where you need a minimum of 10 acres, although maybe 8 would do, or a little more or less. You have to provide the land. If you don't provide the city land, the government subsidized land, nobody's going to build a studio, because all the rest of the land is being bought and held for long-term profit where they can, and it's privately owned, and it's too expensive to build studios on. It's not the investment that people will do for a 50-year studio on it. So the city has to support that. Hence, that area over there, which is owned by Portland's Corporation, has to be an area that goes together now, quickly, promptly, to see Studio 2 in it. This area down here, south side of the river, we're spending $1.5 billion to move the river around. With that in mind, you also have to look at more residential than just the red. While it's nice to see Villiers Island, it's really an area of land that's being connected to the north part of the new river, not connected to the east and not connected to the south. It's just part of the waterfront with the new bridges across it. That's great. But we have a vision for affordable housing, for residential down there. And the vision that we have in front of us isn't accommodating that, in my perspective, quickly enough, and also protects too much of the land to the east as industrial land where some of those uses, not all, some of those uses could be relocated. So what I was looking to do here and to make sure that we were having done was that we accomplished two goals. One, we support the film industry strongly with every way we can to move forward with looking at those parts of McCleary District over here that are city-owned now to go out and look at how we can use them. And I've been told by the city staff and by my colleague, Councillor Thompson in Economic Development, that that is now going to be a priority, that the questions and the work that we've done over the last few months looking at it have made staff understand that. That will be a priority. That's something we're going to do. Two, South Shore. That's also going to be more of a priority. While the land won't be available for 5 to 7 years because of the construction that's required of the and moving of the river, that shouldn't stop us from going forward to identify the actual needs, the mixed use, the residential needs we have, so we don't wait 7 years to talk about it. We start now and go forward. And those were the motions I was looking for, to encourage and to enhance that. The only other area that came into concern is we did receive a letter from Pinewood Studios, and I know that some people have concerns because it came from the studio and the impact of it. But what they were asking for is to be able to provide around the edges of the property some short-term to medium-term rental accommodation. It's not provided in the PIC. It's not there now. But we can accommodate it on the north side in the mixed use, and you can accommodate it from what I understand is hotel use, where depending what you build, if you build a suites hotel, you can use that for a short and a medium-term stay. So I'm looking as we go forward to see how we accommodate that, not just here, but accommodate it here as well. And one of the reasons, which they'll tell you, and you as City Council and the residents of the city own the studio. Studio thrives currently off its releasing of the stages, which is good. But how did we end up with the studio? We ended up with the studio because it wasn't surviving in the past over the revenue from just the stages, and they talk about needing additional revenues. So I believe in the middle term we're going to have to look at that. We're going to have to see how we can accommodate that, and we're going to have to deal with that in the future. Otherwise, I'm going to support the plan as it is and look forward to these changes and the commitments that staff have made to make it work in the future and see how we can do both more residential and more studio on these lands.
Thank you. Okay, we have the motion by Councillor Fletcher. We can put that on the screen. Councillor Fletcher, you want a recorded vote? Recorded vote.
Councillor DiGiorgio, please.
Councillor Palacio, please.
The motion carries unanimously, 38 in favor.
Item as amended. Recorded vote.
I don't know. Wasn't up very long.
Councillor Burnside, please.
Councillor Bailao, please.
The item as amended carries 36 to 1.
Okay, we'll recess to 2 o'clock.